Gentlemen.
Welcome to the BlockCrunch podcast, the go-to podcast for investors and builders in crypto. And before we get started, just a reminder for you guys out there, the BlockCrunch podcast is intended for informational purposes only. Neither the host nor its guests are licensed financial advisors, and nothing discussed should be construed as financial advice. Views held by BlockCrunch's guests are their own, and sponsorship messages do not constitute financial advice or endorsement. With that out of the way, let's jump right in. Now, before we get started with today's episode, I've got some great news for you. Now, a lot of you have been asking for how I analyze projects that I bring on the show. That's why I decided to create BlockCrunch VIP to share with you all the heavy research that goes on behind the scenes. Now, every week or so, our team prepares an in-depth research memo with things like sector analysis, technical concepts made simple, in-depth competitor breakdown, and even interactive models, so you can learn about the most important projects before they become important. And our team is putting in hours every week scouring Discord, Twitter, forums, and blogs to help you get an edge in crypto and understand the latest projects and themes at the deepest levels that goes way beyond just an interview. Now, in addition, we'll also host exclusive AMAs with myself to answer any of your questions. So all of these are only available to BlockCrunch VIP subscribers. And the good news is that while our interviews will always be free, the VIP tier costs less than one coffee a day. So head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP or click the link in the show notes below to sign up. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the BlockCrunch podcast. Now, social is a big theme in crypto that I've always loved diving into, and I think it's really just in the first innings. And we're just putting out the primitives that enable a social graph to appear in crypto. And one of the projects that I'm really excited about that Spartan, my former employer, also invested in is called Galaxy. So I'm really excited to chat with the co-founder of Galaxy, Harry, here today about just what it takes to build a permissionless infrastructure for Web3 projects that powers on-chain credentials and why this is one of the next big things to happen in crypto, in DeFi, in NFTs, and so on. So, Harry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jason. It's really glad to be here.
Yeah. So let's start with what exactly is Galaxy and what you guys are trying to build, and then we can dive into all of those things.
Yeah, so at Galaxy, we're building this open and collaborative credential data network to empower developers to build better products and communities. So basically, for some background about credentials, right? So credentials are everywhere. They can be your public behavior data, your reputation data, your achievement, your contributions. And all of these data are really valuable because they can be used to do like credit scoring, marketing campaigns, loyalty programs, customized voting system for DAOs, civil attack prevention algos, and so on. So basically, we are building the infrastructures to first enable everyone to contribute and curate data to our network through multiple data sources, both on-chain and off-chain. And second, we also have the tools to empower people to use these data for various use cases mentioned above. So that's the overview.
And what kind of inspired that? So what were you doing before, and how did that lead to you building Galaxy?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, our goal was very simple. At the very beginning, I think it was early 2021. That was the very first stage where NFT caught us attention, right? So we were thinking projects like Uniswap, like DEX, like all of these lending protocols need to have some ways to increase engagement through the community in a very sustainable way. So we saw them do all of these yield farming campaigns, but those campaigns are not really sustainable. So basically, at first, we thought, why not we use all of these engagement data on chain, and also leverage the power of NFT to launch all of these loyalty programs. And after we did a couple campaigns alongside with YEarn, with Alpaca Finance on BNB chain, um, we realized the power of these data are not only subject to these loyalty programs. We can use these data to do various stuff, including helping projects to find their target audience, right? So right now, if you want to launch a new DEX, you can come to Galaxy and see who contributed to the Uniswap V2 LP, who are the high volume traders on Uniswap, who or the early farmers on sushi, right? So all of these are really valuable data. So we want to turn these data into tools for projects to leverage on so that they can do various stuff, including like finding target audience, doing voting system for DAO. Right now, DAO are basically purely using how much asset you have as a way for you to do voting, right? But that's probably not going to be optimal in the long term because we also want to take into account your contributions, your like your ability to contribute.
I think this is really interesting because back in the early days in crypto, there is a lot of, I guess, perception that crypto is all anonymous, right? Like Bitcoin is anonymous
Right.
and Ethereum is anonymous. And now there's more talk about slapping some sort of identity layer or social graph on chain. So, in your mind, what is the holy grail of, say, a credential system or a social graph? Like, what type of data do we actually need on users to make crypto more powerful?
So I don't think it's the fact that we don't have these data right now. So we have all of these data already stored in various platforms, including in the Web2 world, right? You have all of your data stored at Facebook, at Google, at financial institutions. I think one of the big problem is all of these data right now are not aggregated into a single layer for developers to query from. If you are a new app, you don't have the permission to access user data, even if a user wanted to give you the access to these data. You need to onboard the user from the ground up. How old they are, what they like, what's their gender, what's their interest. So it's really inefficient for all of these projects because they need to collect all of these information and then serve you better, right? So what we want to do at Galaxy is we want to leverage the Web3 permissionless nature, the Web3 open source nature, so that we can aggregate all of these credential data into a single aggregated layer so that every developers can come in based on users access, based on users choice to to have these data access and have the ability to better serve users based on their interests and their past behavior.
Got it. So you guys are building a platform where developers can come in and query information based on addresses, or based on what is it based on?
So right now it's mainly based on addresses, but basically we're doing is we are also aggregating your identity across the Web3 world and also across Web3 and Web2. So for example, we are mapping your address to Twitter handle, to GitHub handle, to Discord. And we are also mapping your addresses among many different chains, right? So, for example, your address on Solana, on EVMs, and maybe for Cosmos ecosystem in the future as well. So yeah, so we are aggregating your decentralized and centralized identity, and we are also aggregating all of your data mm, on these identities as well.
And is that all automatic? Like, if I as user, I don't want you to know what I'm doing on like this chain or this chain, will you guys still be able to query that, or do I have to give you permission to kind of include what types of data?
So this really depends. So we have two types of credential data, right? So one is public credential data. So for that, it's like your on-chain transactions, your Web2 public your your Web2 public social profiles, like your tweets, your GitHub repo. So all these are public. So you don't actually need to grant anyone permission for us to get the data. We will just query the Web2 services API, or we query the on-chain data to get that. But we also have some private credential data as well. We are not too dived into that front yet, but we are aiming to do more on the private side as well in the future. So basically, for example, the credentials that's based on your email address, right? So for example, CoinList curated a set of private credential that's core email address of the CoinList user, basically the users of their karma points. So these are private credential data that would need the user's permission to give some other developers to access that information.
And I'm sure you guys get this question a lot as well, but how do you think about that versus like privacy? For instance, I think especially in crypto, a lot of people are concerned about revealing their personally identifiable information to external parties, and a lot of people don't want to recreate the same issues that we see with like Facebook or Twitter. So how do you kind of build with that in mind?
Yeah, so that is exactly why we're not too tapped into the private credential data part yet, because we don't actually see a very ready infrastructure for us to curate these credential data while having the users to actually own those data, right? So the second problem that we see for the current credential data system in the Web2 world is you don't actually own your own data. The data are owned by the applications themselves, like Facebook, like Google, and they're monetizing from it. So this is not 100% the right for the long term, right? We want the users to not only um, have the right to give access to someone else, we also want the users to own the data themselves so that they can monetize from it. So basically, we're actively researching on this private credential data layer, private credential data storage layer, so that users can own the data themselves and users can also give the data access to someone else based on their choice.
Got it. And I'd love to talk about the kind of go-to-market slash use cases here as well. So you mentioned that this could be the basis of some sort of a credit score, I'm assuming for DeFi lending protocols. What other use cases do you foresee as the biggest drivers for adoption for Galaxy?
So right now, I think the most used use case for these credential data are actually launching these loyalty programs and marketing campaigns. So for example, a lot of projects, so projects like Hashflow, like YEarn, they leverage these credential data to increase engagement from their community, right? So, for example, Hashflow used our infrastructure and launched marketing campaigns, which helped them grow their trading volume from 20 million in August 2021 to 600 million in October. So this number I think grew 300% during the same time period. What they did is they basically took these credentials, such as whether you traded for more than $100 on Hashflow, and let people who have these credentials to claim these NFT badges. And this creates a great value for them in two aspects. So first, they get to incentivize users to participate more in their protocol for these NFTs because NFTs represent status, represents their contributions. And second, they also leverage our infra to convert blockchain transaction data into something that enables them to identify their loyal users, right? And now they're using all of these credential-based NFTs to give out some special benefits. So, for example, these NFT holders would get some access to some alpha features on their product, and they're also eligible to get some token airdrop in the future. So yeah, so these are the use cases where Hashflow and all of these projects leverage our credentials to increase engagement. And I think some other use cases to use these credentials to identify target audience, right? So for example, Bentag helped us curate a credential of shadowy supercoders last year. So this is a list of 100 K devs who actually deployed smart contracts on the Ethereum mainnet. And after we have this credential, we had more than 13 partners came to us, including Alchemy, Gitcoin, Polygon, Tenderly. All of these partners came to us wanting to give out some special benefits to these users because they're their target audience, right? So basically, they launched a huge campaign that issued out something like 1 month free sub from Tenderly, from Alchemy, GTC special airdrop, Polygon transaction fee rebate, and all of that specifically to those 100K developers. So this was a great way for them to attract new users to their protocol instead of um, incentivize their users to engage more.
Got it. That's really interesting because this is what I foresee is the Web3 version of what Facebook's ad model could look like, right? You're offering these targeting data for different businesses to come in, and maybe you guys take a cut in the middle for the protocol, but you guys are doing this in an open way for with like publicly accessible information, which to
Right.
me is it's really a 0 to 1 type of innovation. And speaking of that, I know you guys are not the only projects that identified this. There are different standards for these kind of credential protocols. I think one of them is DegenScore, which
Right.
grants you a score based on your DeFi usage. I believe ArcX is also working on something related to credit scoring as well. So how does Galaxy differentiate from all the competitors out there? And what is the end goal? Is it to be kind of the ruling standard and then to be kind of the winner takes all type of market leader?
Yeah, so comparing to like DegenScore and RCAS, I think the biggest difference is that we are a more open and collaborative protocol. So I guess for them, they're basically leverage all these public data, all these public on-chain transactional data, and use their own algorithm to define the score, right? So for example, they would say, in the case of DegenScore, they will probably say if you are a Uniswap airdrop claimer, that equals to like 10 score. So we don't really want to do that. We basically define the basic credential data um, on top of our infrastructure, right? So we don't even collect those data ourselves. We provide the tools for everyone to come to us to curate. So for example, we are connected with 7 different chains, including Ethereum mainnet, Solana, Polygon, BNB chain, Phantom, and I think 2 more. And we're also connected with off-chain data sources like GitHub, Discord, Twitter, um, snapshot.org. So basically, everyone can come to Galaxy and curate these data, and everyone else can use these data to build the credit score based on their algorithm, right? So we don't really want to define any algorithm from a top-down approach. We let the community to build everything from ground up, from a bottom-up approach. So we want everyone to come and contribute, and we provide the tools and infra for them to do it. I think that's the biggest difference. Yeah, so I guess the second part is we also leverage NFTs, which is a very very interesting approach for projects to choose whether they want these credentials to be transferable or not. Um, so basically, if you want to issue these loyalty-based NFTs in a very interesting way, you can choose to issue out these credential-based NFTs in a transferable way, right? So people can trade it, people can transfer it, people can transfer these VIP membership to someone else, and people can also play around, for modules like raffles and all these bucks, right? So for example, for Y-Earn, what they did is they wanted to reward existing Woofy token holders while incentivize new people to come in to hold that token. So basically, what they did is for every week you held on more than 2,000 Woofy tokens, you would able to claim one mystery box and get one random NFT out of a set of 6. So they have the Andre one, the Bantag one, and the standard one. And because the Andre one was sold for more than 10 Ether on OpenSea, because everyone wanted that NFT for their status in the Yearn community, everyone really wanted to come in and hold that Woofy token holders, right? So basically, their Woofy token holders number increased by 30% after 3 days of campaign launch. So yeah, so these are the ways that Galaxy enables for projects to play around with these credentials to increase engagement on top of building all these credit scoring stuff.
Hey guys, I'm really excited to tell you more about one of my favorite products in crypto right now, DYDX. This is a team I've known since 2018, and they've built one of the best exchange venues out there that also happens to be decentralized and mobile friendly. Now listen until the end because there's an opportunity for savvy traders out there as well. And here are just a few reasons why I like DYDX over other exchanges. First, it's very liquid. It processes $2 to $3 billion every day in volume and has 35 perpetual swaps as of this recording, which means you can trade things like Ethereum, Bitcoin, Doge, Solana, and most of the most popular assets with up to 20x leverage in the venue today. Now second, it's also extremely cheap, and if you're down bad from the bear market, you don't have to worry about gas fees at all because there is no gas fee on Starkware Layer 2 where DYDX is built on. Now that brings me to my next point as well. It's incredibly fast. Unlike other layer 2 and high-speed dexes, you don't actually have to wait to withdraw your assets anymore. And as an additional point, by using Starkware, DYDX also provides user with increased security and privacy. And my personal favorite feature is the cross-margin feature, which means I can seed one account with USDC and trade across multiple markets from there without needing to start sub-accounts, because I really hate managing so many different sub-accounts. And their iOS mobile app is also live right now, and it's amazing because it's compatible with MetaMask, Coinbase Wallet, Coin98, Huobi Wallet, and a lot of the most popular mobile wallets out there. And it's available for people outside of the US or sanctioned countries today. And one last thing, one exciting opportunity is their competitions. The most recent tier in the $10,000 equity tier have won over $95,000 in rewards. And you can get started with as low as $500 in equity to compete for prizes. So if you're already trading, might as well get paid to do it. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I highly recommend that you head on over to dydx.exchange to learn more. And I thank them for sponsoring this episode. Yeah, and I think this is one of the products that is almost like steroids for adoption, because I'm an angel investor in Hashflow, and I remember their trading volume was maybe in the 20 million range, and then they partnered with you guys, and then it went to like 670 million in
Right.
December for trading volume. And I'm sure there are a lot of examples like that for any projects you guys partner with as well. So can you tell us a little bit about, what was that moment when you guys realized, wow, we hit product market fit? Like this is something that projects actually want to work with us on.
Yeah, so I think at the very beginning we were really hands-on, and even though we had a dashboard on our own for projects to build the campaigns based on these credentials by themselves. Not many partners came to us and used that dashboard to build campaigns because they don't really understand it. They don't really understand the needs. So basically, we helped many of these projects to build the loyalty program or campaigns from the ground up. We help them to do like all the designs around the NFTs, the campaign rules. For the first 1 to 2 quarters, I think we had around 20 to 30 partners. But I think since Q4 last year, our partners grew exponentially. And right now we have more than 500 partners launching more than 2,000 campaigns on Galaxy already. And we have already more than 2,000 credential data sets curated in the network as well, covering more than 5 million users in Web3. So I think after Q4 last year, we finally found that we had product market fit where all of these partners would come to us wanting to launch these campaigns instead of us going to them saying, hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? It really worked for some of these projects, right? So after people saw the case study from Hashflow, from Wire, and from all of these projects, they understood the power for these credential data and also the power of these campaigns.
Got it. And during that journey as well, I remember when we first started chatting very early on, you guys were only doing a handful of campaigns. And I think one of my initial skepticism was that this seems like a SaaS business model where you have to work with each partner very hands on, doesn't seem very scalable. But it seems like you guys found a way to make it more self serve. And you mentioned 5,000 partners. So were there kind of,
500.
500, sorry, yeah. But were there kind of, challenges along the way, or did it take pivots in the business model to get to where you are today?
I think Galaxy was lucky enough that we did not do much pivots. So the one thing that we did is basically we expanded our previous business model, which was only to build the loyalty program and expand that into um, a much bigger infra where we help projects to use these credentials to do many other stuff, including like voting system, right? So I guess the biggest challenge was to build this permissionless infrastructure, which we actually haven't launched yet. So we are building this permissionless infrastructure for almost 1 year now, and it's permissionless on 7 different chains, and it takes a lot of work to actually help projects to curate these credential data on their own, right? So this is a system that's still under design. We already have the self-serve dashboard, which is still in closed beta. But going forward, if we actually want this to be 100% permissionless, if we actually want to build a very easy to use data infrastructure for all of these projects to curate on-chain and off-chain credentials, it needs a lot more work, and we want to expand the data set to be not only on-chain data, right? I mentioned how we are connected with many off-chain data sources like Discord, like GitHub, like Twitter, and we want to expand even more to like offline events, to some other public social media platforms like Reddit. Yeah, so I guess the challenge is how do we actually build this product into a very scalable infrastructure so that we are actually aggregating these credential data from all of these data sources.
Got it. And in terms of the types of projects that you guys partner with the most, is there a specific profile for projects that stand to benefit the most from Galaxy campaigns? Is it like DeFi projects, or do you see more uptick in like NFT projects, for instance?
Um, I think at the very beginning, in 2021, we see more DeFi projects simply because at that time DeFi projects were really hot on the market, and right now we're seeing a uptick on NFT projects and DAOs since more of these projects come up, right? But overall, we don't really have a preference, or the gas infrastructure doesn't really help one sector more than the other. So for NFT projects, sometimes we help them to do pre-launch stuff. So for example, they can leverage the Galaxy credentials to do whitelisting. So previously, all of the NFT projects do whitelist in a very centralized way. Whitelists are not transferable. Whitelist campaigns are managed like across many different venues on Discord, on Twitter, and they can leverage Galaxy to do these whitelist campaigns. So that's what we did with the previous NFT NBA star called Jeremy Lin. So basically, they leverage credentials on Galaxy Network. They leverage credentials on-chain and off-chain. For example, the Twitter activity, the Discord activity, whether you participated in some other big protocols to issue out these whitelist NFTs. And we also see all of these DAOs leverage Galaxy today to track user contribution from Discord, from forum, from Twitter, right? So basically, some of these DAOs, every time they run a community call or AMA, they would use Galaxy to issue out these oats. So oats basically stands for on-chain achievement token, which was created, a standard that's created by Galaxy. So basically, they are sending out these oats based on your AMA participations, and we can do that in a very automatic way on Discord. So it's a very easy to use infra for every DAO to keep track of your contribution.
Mm. Got it, got it. Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of that. And one interesting decision you guys made was also to release a token, which I think has been trading at about 800 million fully diluted for those interested. So, can you talk a little bit about what is the use case for this token? Because as I understand it, you guys use it to pay for the Oracle engine, the credential API. So, yeah, talk a little bit about that, and how you intend to kind of expand on that use case.
Yeah, so there are a couple ways for people to use the token. So first, obviously, the token is used to do voting on Galaxy DAO. That's already live. People can use the token to do vote on proposals so that they can allocate funds from the Galaxy Treasury. And the second, it's used as a payment token on a Galaxy network, right? So we will have the Galaxy API, we will have the Galaxy Oracle to push all these credential data on chain so that smart contracts can query and leverage these data. Yeah, so basically, all of these query will be paid based on usage in the Gal token as well. And the third, and also I think it's the most interesting one, is we also let Gal to be the token for users to signal which credential data is more important than the other. So one very important challenge that we need to solve is once we go entirely permissionless, it's possible that some people would submit some credential data that's very buggy, that's simply wrong, that's not valuable. So it's important for the credential users, which is our partners, our our devs, to identify which credential is more important than the other, is more valuable than the other, right? So basically, we use this credential curation system for every Gal token holder to be able to um, signal which credential data is more valuable than the other. So they basically, how they do that is for every credential data, it will have an associated um, bounding curve where you'll be able to buy these staking share using your GAO token. And the earlier you buy the staking share and the more usage of this credential data, the more you're going to earn in the future and by selling your staking token back to the bounding curve. So this is a very good way for every community member in the Galaxy ecosystem to collectively signal which credential data is more valuable, which credential data would generate more income in the future, so that we can create this permissionless way for people to curate credential data for us, right? So the flip side for us is we might consider to do some punishments for those that submit a wrong credential, and we don't really want to do that because we want to incentivize everyone to contribute and reward them for doing so instead of punishing people for submitting something that's buggy. Yeah, so that's also the use case for the GAO token. And lastly, we recently also announced that we are going to launch the GAO chain on BAS. And GAO is also going to be the gas token for the GAO chain as well. So more info is going to come up on that side as well.
Yeah, that's actually my next question as well. What is the decision to create your own chain, and what kind of benefit does that serve the credential network?
Yeah, so I guess the main goal is we want to build this aggregated layer of credential data um, onto a single place that's also fairly decentralized, right? So right now we store much of these credential data in two places. So first is in our centralized database, and the second of our credential-based keys are issued on 7 different chains. So this doesn't actually help developers to leverage these data if these data sources coming from are come from like 6 or 7 different data sources, right? So basically, for this GAO chain, we can finally store all of these data onto a single chain for everyone to query from, and for developers to build on top of as well. And since BS is EVM, it's very easy for all of these developers to leverage these data based on the smart contracts they have on their chains they're on right now. So yeah, so that's
Yeah, so I'm actually curious. So in terms of the choice for chain, what was the decision for picking BAS?
Yeah, so for BS, I think BS, even though it's called Binance Application Sidechain, it's actually not a sidechain. So it's actually our own chain that's parallel to BNB chain, to Polygon, to Ethereum mainnet. So we always wanted our own chain, but we never had the debt resources to build our own chain purely from the ground up. And BS is a very good way for us to bootstrap the all the experience the BNB chain team has, and to build our own chain, leverage the GAL as the gas token, and also it's EVM compatible for us to create everything on that chain very easily. So yeah, so this is our starting point. We're also going to change something based on the credential data needs, right? So for so for so for Galaxy credentials, the storage layer is going to be more important than the execution layer. So we are thinking about ways we're working with their teams on how we can modify the chain so that we modify the performance around the storage layer and maybe also the privacy layer in the future while maintaining the EVM compatibility, right? So that's something that we're working on as well.
Got it, got it. Yeah, and I can't emphasize how excited I am for what you guys are trying to build. I think this is really one of the few examples where there is a very, very grand vision, but at the same time, there's quantifiable product market fit as well on the day to day level. So, I guess in light of that, I want to make sure that I'm not biased as well and ask you some tough questions. So, what would you say are maybe one or two reasons that Galaxy could fail? Like, under what conditions would Galaxy fail?
That's a very good question. Um, so yeah, so I think Galaxy Galaxy would probably not fail 100%, since we have a really um, good product market fit right now to issue out these NFTs, to issue out these credential based NFTs based on user contribution, based on user data. So that's really a huge demand that's coming from both the Web3 protocols and for the Web2 services as well. So we see a lot of brands coming to us wanting to issue out these NFTs based on their loyalty systems, right? So for example, we have clothing brand, shoes brand, conferences wanting to do this with us. So I do see this as an increasing demand coming from both the Web3 protocols and all the traditional brands. So for that, I think it's going to thrive for the next 3 to 5 years. But on the other side, I do think it's going to be fairly challenging for us to build the Galaxy into a very permissionless and complete infrastructures to power all credential data going forward, right? And one of the biggest challenge is how we can build this very easy to use tool to connect all of these credential data through multiple data sources. Right now, we already see difficulties in helping our users and partners to curate credentials from um, centralized platforms like Twitter, like Discord, because they don't have an very easy to use, very scalable API for us to get all these data, right? So we need to find ways to aggregate all of these data from their data source, or we need to find a way to incentivize them to store these data into the Galaxy infrastructure on the first place. So that's a very long-term vision that also involves a lot of privacy issues where it would also require us to build this very complete privacy-enabled infrastructure for the users to own the data instead of the platform to own these data, right? So I guess for us to achieve the goal of having this one single aggregated layer of credential data network for everyone else to query from going to the future, it's going to be challenging simply because we need to find a good way to connect with all of these data sources.
Yeah, absolutely, and I definitely appreciate the candid take. And I think as we're closing out on an interview, for us to kind of look forward, what are some of the most exciting kind of milestones coming up that maybe users of Galaxy or holders of the Gal token can look forward to?
Yeah, so one thing is obviously the Gal chain details. So we're still finalizing all the details. So please, you can look out for that. It's going to be very beneficial for both our partners and our users, since it's going to create a very good user experience for both of these parties to leverage the Gal ecosystem going forward. And the second part is our permissionless, our self-served dashboard is in the final stage of testing. Yeah, so we are probably going to launch the permissionless version within the next 1 to 2 months. So right now we already have 500 partners, right? So I do expect our partners to grow even faster after we launch that. So yeah, so that's also very something that's coming up.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And for people who want to follow you or follow Galaxy for what you are up to, what are the best channels for them to do this?
Yeah, you can follow our Twitter. So my Twitter handle is at I actually forgot my Twitter handle.
We'll drop it in the show notes below. It's fine.
Yeah, so yeah, follow our Twitter handle for Galaxy and for myself as well, so you can get all the updates.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Harry. This is really fun, really refreshing to talk about something that I think crosses DeFi, NFT, and all the crypto world. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's it for this week's episode of the Blockcrunch podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe on your favorite apps. And in case you didn't know, this interview is also available as a video on YouTube. And if you tag the Blockcrunch on Twitter this week and tell us what you liked about this episode, I'll be sure to respond to you as well. Now, if you'd like to go even deeper, we have a VIP tier where every week or so we write an in-depth research brief or investment memo on a project, and we'll have exclusive AMAs with myself where I answer all your questions as well. Now, we already have analysts from some of the top funds and companies in crypto as subscribers. So if you're serious about getting an edge in crypto, head on over to theblockcrunch.com/VIP to learn more. And once again, thanks for supporting the show, and I'll see you next week.